only a few more weeks. This falls at just the right time, because this is a little reprieve from some of the responsibility language that comes at us through the Beatitudes. We kind of go, summer breeze, mercy. We can do that. The problem is, mercy isn't always as easy to deal with as we think. Luke gives no parallel to this in his Sermon on the Plain version. For Matthew, mercy is clearly important. It's a powerful piece. This understanding of God's good news. Matthew, at least Matthew's Jesus, quotes Hosea at least twice. Chapter 9, Jesus is teaching and comes right out and says the prophetic word. I desire, talking about God, I desire mercy, not sacrifice. In other words, I don't need for you sacrificing idols. Sacrificing animals. What I need for you to do as the people of God is to be merciful in all your ways. It's a prophetic word, and Jesus is lifting that up. Several times that word comes at us in Matthew. The Greek word used here is eleimones, and it carries a nuance of mercy as in equaling alms, giving alms, being merciful, sharing your goods with others. Works of mercy. The Hebrew word, I think, is a wonderful word because it has a kind of a depth and an underpinning to it. Chesed. I like it because you get to be guttural, you know. People have to stand back when you say that, lest, you're going to come. Chesed. Mercy. There is a depth of mercy, and the word chesed gets used over and over again in the Hebrew scriptures, and especially in the prophetic tradition. It's the weight of chesed is doing something rather than feeling something or having an attitude about it. Jesus is saying in a way, blessed are those who do mercy than those who talk about mercy. You may remember at one point there's a story told in the Gospels about the kind of the unmerciful servant. There's the rather wealthy person who finds himself unable to pay off debts. And so he comes to the person even wealthier holding the ticket and says, I'm sorry, I can't meet my obligations. And so what happens is, in a startling way, as Jesus is telling this story, he's forgiven. That was really startling for the people to hear. So what does he do? He goes out and finds someone who owes him money and presses the flesh, asking for his pound of flesh. He learns nothing from receiving mercy because he's not willing, even after receiving it, to share it with somebody else. We have a problem with mercy in a couple of different ways. Most of us, we have a problem because there's some people to whom we don't want to be merciful. Now, come on, you can admit that. Oh, you're sitting there looking at me. You want me to believe that that's not true of you. That there are people that come to your house Thanksgiving and Christmas and you just love them to death, all of them. But we have another problem because so often we have a problem receiving mercy because it's the same thing as grace. We have to feel that we have somehow earned the mercy because we don't want to be in anyone's debt. And so there are people who actually find it hard to receive grace and mercy. As I was working on this sermon, I don't know what it is about the Beatitudes. My mama keeps jumping into the conversation. There was a man in Allens Creek community, and everyone knew the family because everybody knew everybody. He was charged, as it turned out, much to everybody's surprise, and convicted of sexually molesting his grandchildren. Now, it's difficult for us to imagine what life would be like in any community for someone who's listed as a sexual offender, someone who is listed for such a crime as that. He spent his time in prison. He knew of no other place in terms of community, and so he returned back home, living in exile, living alone, a pariah. It was difficult for him even to go and get food to eat, because again, everybody knew everybody. And so he would sit there alone in a different kind of cell, in deep exile, in the emotional exile, with no real hope of redemption. My mom worried about him. My mom thought that what he had done was absolutely horrendous. She couldn't imagine it. How could anybody do such a thing? It bothered her terribly for the kids, and yet she also was worried about this man's soul. So she began by saying, somebody needs to make an effort. My mom, when the senior group would meet, would make what she called Mexican cornbread. I don't really know there was anything Mexican about it except that she threw a few red peppers in. And the associate pastor of the church really liked it and pigged out on it, but she decided, well, it was just as easy to make 2 cakes as one. So when she was preparing for the luncheon for the golden harvesters, as they called themselves, she would throw some extra in and stop at his house on the way and share food for lunch. It was hard for him and hard for her. There was awkwardness, there was embarrassment, but my mom always felt people should know that Jesus loved them. And so she would take that food. She followed that pattern even when there weren't golden harvesters, to make human contact, to try to flesh out a love and a mercy that she didn't understand, but was compelled to live into by her understanding of the gospel. And so it went. My niece, who was not really big on religion, she had had some experiences with the Wiccans along the way. And it was interesting because she said one day when we were talking, well, leave it to Nanny Grace to go and take food to no pedophile. And she said it actually with some amazement, even though nothing amazed her about her grandmother. And one day, my mother broached another boundary. For when she took the food, she said to him, next week is our golden harvesters gathering, and I'll expect to pick you up. I don't know what that expression was on his face. I would have paid to seen it. Being startled, even though he knew who she was. And the next week when she showed up, because it was really hard when Mom told you what she was going to do, to say, no, I won't. That's why she was always, for 45 years, I guess, the nominating committee person in the church. He opened the door and stepped out. I also would have loved to have had and would be willing to pay money for the look on the faces of the golden harvesters at Allens Creek Baptist Church when my mom brought him into the room. But here's the thing. Because of the way that she chose to embody her faith, her presence gave him the authorization to be there in their eyes. And slowly and surely, he was drawn back into the community at a level. Because when all was said and done, the only way that he would have found the capacity to truly be reconciled, to truly face up to the damage that he had caused in the lives of his family members, was to come face to face with God and the terribleness of facing God's mercy. Sounds strange, but it's true. It's easier for some of us to face a judgmental hellfire and brimstone, I'm going to squash you like a bug on the carpet. It's easier for people to face that kind of God than to come face to face with a God who's going to look at you and say, I wish you hadn't done that, but I love you because you're mine. Mercy's hard. It's hard to give. It's hard to give to someone who has so hurt people. Mercy is hard sometimes for us to give to people that we are not sure we like. Mercy is hard for people who have made decisions about other people and who they are, sometimes making judgments about them simply because they were born somewhere else. God have mercy on all of us. And yet, Jesus says, blessed are the merciful. We have to I think, in order to understand this, live our lives into that mercy every day. Practice that mercy with others every day, until it is integrated within our minds and bodies, and we in turn become true vessels of mercy in the hands of God. God was merciful in giving us the gifts of creation. God was merciful in making us in the image of God. God was merciful in saying that we belong in community. We are made that way. God is merciful in so many ways. And as we experience that and turn around and share that, we are changed more and more each day. It may have been Roar, or it may have been Cynthia Bourgeau, I'm not sure, but she wrote, God has made a covenant with creation and will never break the divine side of the covenant. That a covenant is only broken from our side. For God's love is steadfast. Isn't that what the psalmist said? It is written in the divine image within us. Then goes on to say, refusing to be forgiven is a form of pride. It's saying, I'm better than mercy. I'm only going to accept it when I'm worthy and can preserve my so-called self-esteem. Only the humble person, the little one, can live in and after mercy. Yes, it's so much easier to hear this beatitude when we start. We don't feel the pressure of God's righteousness. We don't feel the pressure of being a part of God's purposes and the weight of doing that work, seeking that righteousness when we hear, "Blessed are the merciful." But you and I both know that it has its burden and it has its place and it has the power to change us and those to whom we give mercy. And it is the work to whom we've been called. What a work that is. Don't you think?